Have you been told to squeeze your shoulder blades together when you're doing rowing exercises, band pull aparts, or to straighten your posture? I'm going to show you a few reasons why that may not be the most effective cue and what you should do instead. Hi, I'm Alex Zeffer, founder of Resilient Training Rehab, and I've helped thousands of coaches and clinicians get faster and more effective results with their clients. Let's get into it. So before we get into better ways in order to cue this, let's talk about some of the reasons why it may not be the most effective cue and what the space in between the shoulder blade actually does, or why it's important to keep this space open. So this posterior part of the rib cage and maintain the space is very important for shoulder flexion as well as external rotation and abduction, which just means my arm is moving away from the center of my body. If this space is closed and I'm squeezing my shoulder blades together so the shoulder blade comes close to the spine, I'm going to steal that motion. And so this is why in a lot of my courses, we talk about how to open this space up or turn the rib cage underneath the shoulder blade. So when you're cueing, squeezing the shoulder blade together, what's happening is you are telling somebody to push their rib cage forward, and it's as though you're leaving the shoulder blades behind. So when they push this rib cage forward, their weight now goes towards their toes. It's going to cause a lot of tension in between the shoulder blades, a lot of tension in the back part of the pelvis. By squeezing your shoulder blades together, you're not actually training the rhomboids like you think you are. What's happening is because the rib cage is going so far forward, you're not actually putting the rhomboid in a position that can actually work properly. So what we want to happen is we actually want the scapula to start a little bit away from the spine. Because if the scapula starts away from the spine, then I pre-lengthen that muscle. So that now when I bring the shoulder blade back, not squeezing excessively where my spine starts to get pulled forward, but if I start to bring the shoulder blade back a little bit and maintain that space, I'm going to contract the rhomboid through its full range of motion while also not stealing range of motion at the shoulder. So again, if I squeeze my shoulder blade excessively, then I'm going to be limiting my ability to flex my shoulder and externally rotate my shoulder. I want to train somebody in a way where I'm developing these muscles, but also maintaining that range of motion so that when we get into other positions, like going overhead or pressing where I need that space to stay open, I want to make sure that I'm not robbing that by doing an exercise like this. So if I am squeezing my shoulder blades together, I'm effectively just pushing my ribs forward, which is not training the actual muscle that we're looking for, and it's stealing range of motion at the shoulder that we need. So there's not a lot of benefit to that cue, in my opinion. Now, I understand that a lot of people may get upset by me saying that, but it's important to understand that that cue was just made in order to try to create more tension between the shoulder blade. But as you can see, if I squeeze my shoulder blades together, my chest is just going forward, my ribs are popping up. It's not actually creating that tension at the rhomboid anymore. The rhomboid in that position is not even on anymore or not able to contract more because of where the arm position is. As soon as my arm clears the rib cage and I start to going back behind me, I'm not actually creating more of that contraction of the rhomboid. I am just causing the rib cage to turn away from that side. So if I go like this, you can see how I'm now just rotating the rib cage. If I do it together, I'm now just going forward. And the more I go forward, the more my elbows go back, my shoulder's gonna start to round forward. So when we are cueing the row, for example, I wanna make sure that I'm starting in more of an open back position where the scapula is away from the spine. And then when I pull, I want to pull to the point where my ribs won't go forward. So I usually get people to stop where their rib cage ends, because if I go too far back, then you end up by seeing people round their shoulder forward excessively, or their elbow goes in, or their head starts to pop forward. So creating this open space before, and then trying to maintain that shape as you pull apart. So you can see my chest isn't going forward, but I'm keeping my chest back as I'm pulling, or I'm keeping my rib cage retracted. So I'm bringing my shoulder blades away from the spine by letting my chest sink in between the shoulder blades. And as I'm doing it, I'm trying to maintain that space. Now, I'm not trying to get people to slouch to do it, but just sit back. As they pull, they're not letting their chest come forward. They're just maintaining that ribcage position. That way, we are able to maintain that space. So now let's talk about a couple exercises and how we can position those exercises in a way that's more effective for not just shoulder health, but also to actually train the muscles in the way we want them to be. The first exercise we're going to talk about is going to be the cross-body row. The reason why I like this movement is because by being in this kind of cross-body position where the arm is coming across the body, I'm going to have to turn my rib cage in towards my armpit. And that is going to effectively move the shoulder blade away from the spine. As we discussed earlier, what we want to happen is the rib cage to turn underneath the shoulder blade. So I can turn the rib cage by squeezing my shoulder blade together, which is not what I want. Or I can keep my arm fixed and turn my ribs underneath the shoulder blade. That's how we're going to create space in the back part of the rib cage. So we're not only training for strength, but we're also going to open up range of motion. So in this position, what I like to get people to do, and this is a seated variation, don't worry too much about my legs for this video, but what I like to get people to do is really allow them to reach the shoulder blade around the spine. So reach the arm, let the cable win. As they breathe out, they're going to pull, but I don't want them to pull and their chest turn like that. That would be equivalent to squeezing your shoulder blade. But instead, keep the chest where it is, pull the arm. When you start to feel like you're pulling too much or your chest starting to turn, that's when you've gone too far. So like I said, I usually stop where my rib cage ends and I get in that position. Sometimes what I'll do with people is I get them to put their arm across their chest. So when they row, when their elbow touches their arm or their hand, that's where they would stop. Keeping the chest stationary, I'm just pulling across. I can even take a big breath into this bottom position. Really feel that upper back open and then breathe out as I pull. Again, not too far. And I'm just going to go back and forth. But again, key point here is keep the chest stationary. That's going to allow the rib cage to turn underneath the scapula. So now that I showed a single arm cross body row, let's talk about what's traditionally used, which is more of this 2-arm row. And let's talk about strategies that we can do in order to, again, maintain that position. So again, what a lot of people will do is they will start with their shoulder blades already pre-retracted, right? So they'll start there because they think that as they pull, they're going to create more tension in those rhomboids. What I actually want you to think about doing is allowing the shoulders to wrap around the spine. Again, you're not coming up and over like this. You're just thinking, I'm staying tall, but I'm letting the cable win. So you can see my back starts to open. And the way that you know it's going to be open is if you take a big breath in, you'll feel the stretch in that upper part of the back or the back part of the rib cage. So then what we could do is we can manipulate the foot position by having our feet bent. For example, it's going to help push us back. But let's just say we have our legs straight in this position. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, let the shoulder blades pull. I'm not leaning back. I'm not folding too far forward. I'm just maintaining an upright position and letting the shoulder blades pull. And then holding this position, I'm then going to do exactly what we talked about in the first exercise. I'm going to pull, but I'm not going to bring my chest forward. I'm going to keep my rib cage where it is. Bring my arms. I'm going to stop where my rib cage ends. So my elbows don't go past here where I'm bringing the bar towards my chest. I'm just going to maintain this position. Take a big breath in. Breathe out, pull. I'm going to stop where that rib cage ends. You can see my chest has not changed position. It's going to maintain that position the whole time where I'm thinking about leaning my chest in between my shoulder blades. So I'm not going to pull myself forward. I'm just going to maintain that position. This is a concept called retracting the rib cage. So instead of retracting the shoulder blade where I'm squeezing them together, I'm thinking, how can I lean back and retract the rib cage? That way I can have a more stacked position of the rib cage and the pelvis as I'm doing this row. Okay, so now we talked about the rows, let's talk about the band pull aparts, because this is something that a lot of people, when they do, they really squeeze their shoulder blades together and they really flare their ribs. So again, it's going to be the same principle where we're going to start with our arms reaching forward. So we're thinking chest nice and tall, but I'm just going to reach my arms forward so I sink my chest back. Again, we're not coming up and over. It's just a nice little retraction. Then I'll grab the band. And then maintaining this reaching of the shoulders, I will then pull apart. What you can see is if I keep on going, that's where my ribs start to flare. But this will feel excessive because if you maintain this position, it's going to be very hard for you to really bring the chest forward because your objective is how can I keep my chest in between my shoulder blades as I'm pulling. So from the back view, you'll be able to see as I'm doing this, I have my back nice and open, and as I pull, I'm not bringing my chest forward like this. I'm keeping my chest back as I'm pulling, and you'll actually feel a lot more muscle activity while you do it this way because you're keeping the muscles in the position they should be in to work effectively. So you get a lot more rear delts, you get a lot more middle part of your traps or the muscles in between the shoulder blades, as well as rhomboids and other exercises. But again, I'm causing the rhomboids and those muscles to be in a lengthened position first, and then I'm maintaining that as I now allow the shoulder blade to move around the rib cage or on the rib cage versus the rib cage going forward, and that causes my shoulder blades to slam together. So the more we can get the rib cage to actually do the movement, the more we're going to get muscle activity, and we're actually going to strengthen the muscles we want while improving mobility. So I think at this point, we should probably lose the squeeze your shoulder blades together. Instead of thinking about retracting the shoulder blades or squeezing the shoulder blades, we should be thinking more about retracting the rib cage. How can I bring my chest in between my shoulder blades to get into a better position, maintain that position as we then allow things to move around the ribs. That way, we're going to get multiple benefits, not just strength, not just hypertrophy, but also restore mobility and compensations. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, save, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.